to talk about what we're going to talk about, because this is the podcast. It's what we're here to do.
It was my idea to do planets.
Yeah, but we finally got to it.
And then
because we couldn't decide what to actually do.
And then we couldn't decide if we were going to throw in the rest of astrology, because there's actually kind of a lot in astrology.
Oh, you're getting way too far ahead.
And then we weren't sure if we were going to do...
You're getting way too far ahead, man.
We weren't sure we were going to do
far ahead.
mythology.
You're already way too far ahead.
And then we'll probably have a special guest to do mythology. It's sort of a big jumping off point.
You're already way too ahead.
You always say that. You always say I'm too far ahead.
They couldn't
And
know.
it's always like right before that, you're always like, hurry up.
This better be the
You're
part
always
where
like,
it
hurry
starts.
up. And then when we start, I'm like, and then you're like, oh, you're too fast now. It's like, well, you're always trying to, you are like a pump. Or like you are like what's the word? A barrier? A dam. No. You're like a porous rock.
No.
You're like
Nah.
an actuator.
Nah.
Yeah, you're an actuator.
No, I build actuators. No.
Yeah, you've become an actuator.
No.
You are the Tao of the actuator.
No. Who are we and what do we do?
It's something that throttles, you know?
You're a throttler.
It's like a membrane that stops too much or too little from happening.
Nah, you
like
just,
an O-ring.
You just give them too much information on what we're doing before they even know who we are or what we're doing.
They know who we are, probably. And if they don't, I'm your host, Luke Madrid. This is my co-host,
Andrew Haskins.
And this is The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just track the movement of the heavenly bodies. We ascribe complex personalities and abstract metaphorical matrices over every single one, individually, and map them categorically to the esoteric anatomy of the rabbit's spiritual psyche. Because you know what, people? Today we're talking about planets. Yeah. Specifically the esoteric kind.
Yeah, not just the physical body planets, but like when like somebody draws the little planetary symbol and they're like, oh, I'm going to do some magic. What the hell are they talking about?
I actually kind of wanted to talk about the real planets, like the big rocks in space.
Well, we'll probably discuss them a little in this, because you can't talk about the planets without talking about the planets. So, you know, that just seems a little hard to talk about the planets without talking about the planets.
So I was a space camper for 5 years in a row as a kid. And maybe not in a row. Maybe there was like a year I skipped in there. I don't know. But I went 5 different times. And I'm pretty sure that cost my mom and dad more than braces. And it had a more permanent effect, too. When I first think of the planets, the first planet I think of is Mercury. That's the first planet. It kind of makes sense. Because in the tarot, Mercury corresponds to the magician, who's number 1. Would you think of Earth as the number 1 planet?
Actually, if we're going to get crazy, like deep about like how humans view the world, yes, Earth is the first planet, because that's where we start.
Gaia.
Yeah, this is like the beginning point. It's like right beneath our feet, man. It's the first planet we ever recognized as what a planet is. It's a thing that you can stand on, planet.
And it's flat, right?
Oh,
it's a flat plane.
We're not getting into that one, man. You know, I think the internet is sick of flat Earth.
No, it's a flat plane held up by turtles.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely carried by a turtle around the heavens.
What holds the turtle up?
Oh, it's the turtle. The turtle just...
Turtle's all the way down.
Yeah, it's the turtle all the way down.
So, besides Earth... Okay, no, for realsies, though. There's a whole...
Yeah. We could talk about, like, how Mercury's the first planet closest to the sun. And then, like... No. Earth is the first planet because it's the only planet that matters. Because
that's where you're born.
Yeah, it's the only planet we're actually on.
Western astrology. People are always dumbfounded when you tell them, you know, this astrology we do out here in the West has nothing to do with the background stars. You know what I mean?
Not at all.
Like,
it has more to do with the sun and our position around it.
And and its relationship to the Earth. Yeah, the Earth and the sun are definitely the most important quote-unquote planets. And then the moon would be like a very close third.
Yeah.
Almost tied for second with the sun, because it seems to be important to everything, to life on Earth. Well, so yeah, we live on Earth. You know what? There's a channel I heard, and it was talking about all the esoteric symbolism of Super Mario being related to the Earth, like the mushrooms.
Yeah, the Mushroom Kingdom.
And the shells, like the turtle shells, like, and that whole mythology of the flat Earth being held up by turtles. How everything in the Mushroom Kingdom is sort of rounded, like a pregnant belly, or like the sphere of the Earth. Yeah, I think we're spherical Earth people on this show. So if you don't agree, you're probably not going to
go back to Flatland.
Yeah, we're probably not going to change our minds on this. Because if Earth is flat, I've had a whole childhood of being indoctrinated by standard model space. stuff. So
Kerbal works too well.
yeah, and Kerbal Space Program is really fun. I think if Earth were flat and that game were not real, my whole universe would be crushed because it would mean all my space sims were fake.
Yeah, but then you'd live on a flat Earth, and then you'd wonder what's behind the ice wall.
Nazis.
Yeah, Nazis with freaking
Nazi UFOs.
Yeah.
Nazis UFOs are behind the ice wall. I heard about it on YouTube, dude.
Yeah. So.
Anyway.
Yeah, okay, so what is the Earth in, like, the esoteric scene? Like, the Earth is really, like, the stage. It's the backdrop. This is where everything happens. This is the realm of the elements. And this is sort of what we deal with every day with, like, dirt and wood and water and air and all this stuff that we're kind of dealing with and we're composed of.
Okay, so
this is what the esoteric Earth represents.
Okay.
Physical matter. Physical material matter.
Okay, I'm going to stop trolling Andrew now that we're like 5 minutes into the episode. So, esoteric Earth, we're all composed of Earth, and the Earth is composed of the 4 elements, right?
Yeah, and so if you want to get really, really big into this, esoteric Earth is like all physical matter everywhere. So, like, the entire universe is esoteric Earth. It would be like, this is where it all takes place. This is the realm of the elements. This is how it all happens. But that's a little bit more blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so the physical world is Earth.
Yeah, so it's not just Earth. It's also the sun, the moon.
It's matter.
All matter. That would be represented by the Earth. But this is also like water, fire, air, and Earth. Like the double Earth, right? Like the dirt Earth. These 4 elements compose the realm, and they all take the 4 corners. And this is like where all the most of the Gaian Earth magic kind of stuff comes from.
Okay, so when you learn the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, when you first learn the ritual, you're learning to draw banishing Earth pentagrams, correct?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, the idea is that you're banishing the Earth and all the other elements as well. So, like, you banish the lowest element, and you're banishing all the other elements as well. So you're banishing the densest element, so you're getting rid of all the subtle elements as well.
So if we're going to be on the esoteric track, then how is that separate or different from Saturn? Because Saturn is usually equated with matter, and I guess maybe Saturn has more to do with time.
Yeah, but we're not there yet. We'll get there, because we'll draw these distinctions, because it's easier to go up the tree than down the tree when you're talking about all these energies.
But in Kabbalah, the sphere of Earth sits on the lap of Saturn.
Yeah. It's all taking place in Binah. Okay, so it's all happening there. So right now,
because it's the beginning and the end of everything in the material world, Saturn.
So where we live is supposed to be the realm of the elements, and this is great. The best epitomized by, like, Aang in the Avatar series is, like, he's a representation of basically the avatar of Earth. He has all the powers, can, like, access all the memories, and that's, like, the whole thing about Earth is, like, we're kind of a storehouse of all these energies that, like, are floating around our solar system, and so this is where they all actuate, all happen. It's like the most receptive of all the planets. It's the one that's actually getting all the things to happen on it. So all the other planets, they kind of, like, they get to enact themselves and manifest here on Earth. And that's its power, is that it's the stage, it's the backdrop.
Okay.
It's where it's happening.
And it contains enough variance and life and death and all the different things to be that staging ground for the other energies and planets.
Yeah. In fact, everything that's going on here is a representation of the planetary energies pouring into us from the next planet, which is the moon.
So the Earth is your human body and your human life.
Yeah, that would be the idea, is that, like, that's your physical nature, like your animal being, yourself.
Okay.
In that sense, in your physical, raw sense.
Well, to move to the moon, you have I'm sure the Earth has something to do with pregnancy and giving birth. And then it quickly moves to the moon after that, and the cycles of the moon, because things on the Earth tend to move in cycles to the moon.
Yeah, so we got the moon, right? And, like, the moon is, like, it's not really a planet, right? And we're all like, yes, the moon's not a goddamn planet. It's a fucking moon. It says it's right in the name, man. It's the moon. It's a natural satellite.
You know what I had heard actually recently is that
it's hollow and full of snakes.
Well, yes, yes, it is definitely a moon base for lizards. The moon is a base for lizards, is the correct way to say it.
It's a base for lizards, so it's where we should put all the lizards.
I guess NASA and the space people are maybe considering the moon actually might be a planet because it is that big, and we'd sort of orbit each other.
Well, it is one of the largest planets compared to, natural satellites compared to what it's orbiting. Like, it is the largest in our system compared to its host.
Like, how? Okay, so yeah. And it has a very strange orbit. I don't believe any other moon orbits with one side that's always away and one side that's always forward.
Yeah, because it's tidally locked. And, like, the weird thing is, now this is a weird...
Is that what you call it?
Call it tidally locked.
Tidally locked when...
Mr. Space Camp?
Rotation of the planet is at the same rate that its...
axis spins.
This is really hard to describe.
Yeah. Its orbital rate is the same as its spin... like, as its regular spin on its axis.
That's not going to make sense to anyone.
People are into space planets and understands what an axis is.
There is no dark side of the moon, but there is a side of the moon that never faces Earth. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that would be the dark side or the unknown side of the moon to us.
That's the side that all the reptiles live on. I would imagine they live
inside. And the Nazi base is on that side as well.
I think the Nazi bases are on that side of the moon. And then the lizards live on the inside of the moon. This is just speculation. They did not teach me about this at space camp.
Okay, so the moon is supposed to represent, like, the tidal flow of life and, like, the life-giving principle or the sexual energy of humans. Like, this is the thing that, like, where matter starts getting a little trickery. There starts some fuckery, man. You know, this is that surge in your loins when you're feeling randy. The moon is these primal things that are kind of in our conscious mind, but beneath our conscious mind as well. Sort of like the dream state. Like, we're aware of it, but we're not really sure what's going on.
Because it doesn't radiate its own light. It can only reflect the light of the sun.
Yeah. So it's...
And the sun, we kind of have to jump to the sun a little bit because the sun is the radiance of the soul. It's the source of the soul's light. In that sense, the way that the moon's relationship to the sun is that it reflects the sun. So while you're not getting a direct view of the divine world, you're not getting a direct view of God through the psyche or through your dreams, you're getting a refracted view.
So it's distorted.
It's distorted.
It's the right thing, but it's not coming in as clearly.
It's going to be illusionary. It's going to be dreamy. It's going to be like a puzzle to decipher. It's going to come in different forms.
And it also represents illusionary things. And, like, the weird thing about the moon is it also has a crazy relationship with Saturn because the moon orbits our planet every 29 and a half days. And Saturn orbits our sun every 29 and a half years. So there is a fractal relationship between us and the moon, our planet and the moon, our star, and Saturn, which is a really important esoteric planet, and we'll get to it.
I almost feel like you gotta start with Saturn or the sun or something.
Nah, you go up the tree. This is how people gotta learn.
See, we're kind of going back to Kabbalah here, but we're mainly talking about the planets now. We're not really talking about the Sephiroth as much.
But we're going to mention them anyways because it's hard not to at this point in our career.
There's a few more things I want to say about the moon, though. I don't know what, though. So the moon having to do with, like, pregnancy and gestation because our first calendars were taken with the moon.
Oh, and psychic powers.
Yeah, it's associated with psychic powers, intuition. Dreams. And the way one interacts with one's soul is through the dream world or in dreams or in the imaginary world. And that's where the work takes place. So it makes sense that when the moon's out, that's when you're having your dreams. The dream world is where you go about doing the spirit stuff. So its association with magic and the intuition is right there. You got Earth and you got the moon, and I keep seeing in my mind's eye this big pregnant belly. And I feel like we're not going to be able to move on unless we talk about pregnancy at least a little bit.
Because this is like where it happens, man.
Because, okay, there's an association between menstruating and the moon. It was probably the first big mystery that humankind ever dealt with. It's like, oh yeah, my woman, she's bleeding.
And the moon's that same shape.
What's going on? Why is she bleeding?
And why is the moon that same shape when she's bleeding?
And why is it always in the same place at the same time when she bleeds? And how come she's not dying? Is she controlling the moon? Is the moon controlling her? Is she the moon? You know what I mean? What's the deal? What's going on? So you got this personification of godhood and the first mysteries being associated between woman and the moon. and between pregnancy and the moon. Because if the woman stops bleeding, then she starts getting the bump in her belly. That's like the crescent of the moon, you know? And then she issues forth life the same way the Earth does to the cycles of the moon. And it sort of seems like, I would imagine that would be an all-consuming mystery at first. You know what I mean?
It probably was for the first part of our evolution.
Why?
Then that's why we have that Venus, that giant big-tittied Venus.
And I'm sure nothing feels as good as like pussy. So especially in the ancient world when everything just bites you and stabs you and kills you,
or just rubs down your skin, you know, just coarse, makes you all coarse or cuts you.
Yeah,
it's just like, dude, it.
So there's got to be something magical about that thing.
Yeah.
Where babies come from, and yeah.
All right, so
that's the moon. We could just go on and on about the moon because there's association with hunting as
it's
well.
It's an undying mystery.
Because you go hunting at night when there's light out, when there's the moon. So I would, and then you've also got intuition and being able to see at night.
Yeah, we could end up spending a whole thing on the moon, but we gotta move on.
So the moon's magic AF, basically.
Yeah,
it's got everything to do with magic, and
it's number's 9 for some awful reason.
And it has more to do with pregnancy than it does with love.
Yeah, let's move to Mercury.
Mercury.
Yeah, so Mercury's all about the
back
mind
to Mercury.
And intellect, and
Mercury's the fast planet. It orbits the sun the quickest. It never gets more than 29 degrees away from the sun. And it's like a little kid, right? It's never too far away from its parent.
Basically, it's a weird one because it has the most associations, and it seems to be the fastest and the smallest planet, but it seems to do the most, especially for our societies. So one of the biggest symbols for Mercury is the caduceus, and if you see a caduceus, what do you think? I can get some medical treatment.
Right.
You know, it's we see it on the hospitals, everywhere. It's like a legit symbol that's used normally in our society.
Isn't that Asclepius' staff though?
It's also somebody else has a staff, but it's only one snake.
Yeah, that's Asclepius, I think.
Yeah. Asclepius, I think, only has one snake. The caduceus was given to Mercury by Apollo.
Okay.
Yeah, it was given to Hermes by Apollo because he's Apollo's student.
Oh.
Yeah. So
yeah, because Mercury's never that far away from the sun. That would make sense. And I would imagine it's also considered a hermaphrodite, probably because it's also a child, and it's sexless, kind of like a child.
Well, yeah. So the 3 original, or the 7 original planets, the 7 original esoteric planets, are the close planets.
And have you ever seen a little kid? They never shut up and they never stop moving around, man.
Well, okay, so all 7 of them, they all have a male to female thing association.
Okay.
And Mercury is the only one that's androgynous.
Okay.
And so there is a thing in our society, in our whole occult schema, that there has been an androgynous thing. There has been a hermaphrodite. It's even in the name, hermaphrodite, Hermes.
Trismegistus.
Yeah. So again, this is you can't tell what it is. You know.
It's tricky. It's like a little kid.
And it's also a trickster.
Yeah, kids like to play pranks and be smart and lie.
It's hard to tell kids, little kids. Sometimes it's really hard to tell if it's a boy or a girl. You're looking at a really little kid, and you're with long hair. It's is that a boy with long hair? Is that a girl wearing jeans? I don't know.
And being a boy or a girl, when you're a little kid, their hormones are really not that different until puberty. And then the differences start making a bigger difference. So they are hermaphroditic in nature to some degree, naturally. Planets. So, okay, Mercury is the messenger of the gods. So, in a birth chart, it usually corresponds to short trips. I'm an Uber driver, so Uber driving is the energy of Mercury. I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm going here, I'm going there, but not too long of a distance in any one direction. You know what I mean? It has a correspondence to the nervous system for that reason, and the transmission of messages between nerves and different
communication in general.
Yeah, so it has to, and then communication is supposed to be fast.
This is why everyone's oh, you shouldn't do that. No, Mercury's in retrograde. It's Mercury's in retrograde half the goddamn year. You know, don't tell me that it's constantly in retrograde and that's bad for communication when we're totally advancing faster and faster with our ability to communicate.
Well, problems in communication cause all sorts of problems.
Well, yeah, that communications breakdown is really bad.
And if you're gonna hack something, break into something, it usually involves a bit of trickery and lying and maneuvering and all that. So
also, it's the planet of magicians and magic.
you know what I had learned when I was a kid? I don't know if it's true. I'll have to look it up. But I'd heard that the Mercury has kind of it's not exactly like the moon, where there's always one side that's away from the sun. But I hear because of its orbit, it rotates slowly. So it like slowly roasts kind of. And there's one side that's mostly cold.
Oh, yeah.
And there's one side that's pretty effing hot.
Yeah, do you remember Michael, the old Scottish guy who used to work with us? He told me of a sci-fi book that there was cities on Mercury that, like, they were on giant tracks that, like,
Yeah.
it would heat up and expand because they would be right in the temperate zone. The sun is like, it's okay to be there because it's, like, the perfect temperature.
Yeah.
But as the thing heats up by the sun, it moves along like these giant caterpillars, like the whole city. So
That's
it
really
stays
clever.
constantly in the temperate zone.
That's really clever. But yeah, I had heard that there are places on Mercury that are like as cold as Pluto because it doesn't have an atmosphere and it's perfectly obscured from the sun's radiation on its dark side. That's just what I had heard. It sounds like based from your little science fiction story there seems to be under the same idea. So I guess that
Well, yeah, you gotta know science if you're gonna write science fiction.
So that kind of wraps up. I guess we can move on from Mercury.
Mercury is all about science fiction. All right, let's move on to Venus.
The best planet.
Yeah, I'm your Venus. I'm your fire, your desire. We all know what Venus is about.
Venus is the hottest planet.
It's the symbol for women.
And it's the brightest planet.
Yeah.
It's the only planet that can rival the moon or the sun in terms of brightness.
All right, so remember how we were talking about ancient man and comfort?
It's the only planetary body besides those other two that can cast a shadow. You can get a shadow from Venus, I hear. I've never seen it, but I hear.
What?
It can be. Yeah, it's the only other planet besides the moon or the sun that can cast a shadow. Yes. That's what I've heard.
How can the sun cast a shadow? So you're saying that like Venetian light, like on a night in the middle of the night, that you can have a shadow from like the morning star.
Yeah, presumably once the sun is down, and I assume if there's a new moon and the moon is down as well, and you just got Venus super bright, it's possible to make a shadow with it. That's what I've heard. I just realized we left the windows open. It's gonna be kind of a noisy episode. Sorry, guys. Okay, so Venus. Shit, where do we start with Venus?
Okay, so Venus is all about comforts, pleasurable things.
And things you're attracted to.
Yes, so it's not just sex, but it does involve it. Venus is like, okay, so if you're sitting on a pillow and it's all nice and soft, and you're like, I can relax because it's all soft, that is Venetian energy. When you go into the bathroom and you wash yourself and you're all like nice and clean and you're grooming yourself, like that's Venetian energy. These things are what that energy is about. It's about what makes you attractive and what you are attracted to. So like we all know that like a flower, like what is a flower? It's the sex organs of a plant, right?
Right.
But it's meant to attract bees so that they can it's about attraction. It's about like the presentation, peacocking, if you will. Like this is all Venetian energy.
Right. It has to do with things you're attracted to, innocence, nature, receptivity.
Nakedness.
Although I've had it described to me that if you're gonna, the difference between the moon and Venus is that the moon is more like the forest and nature unkempt, and Venus is more like a walled garden where it's well kept and it's purposefully made to be beautiful. And then Venus is also another association of Venus is like Venus is like knows stuff and like knows how to carry on a conversation and is somewhat civilized and knows romance, whereas the moon really just knows how to be like a mom. You know what I mean? It's more like you got a lover versus...
It's the difference between a mother and a lady.
Yeah.
You know, like the idea of an old school lady, like where they know how to be proper. Now, don't take that the wrong way. What I mean is how they're determining what proper is back in the day.
Back in the Victorian, yeah.
Yeah, so like a Victorian maiden or some shit like that. Like a Southern belle.
Let's work like California hippies, like.
Yeah, we're just a bunch of deadbeats.
We're all like
here
furry armpits and pot smoking out here, man. It's just whatever.
Yeah, so like Venus is actually the ruler of fashion. So fashion's actually ruled by Venus. This is also more of the life-giving properties of the feminine, while the moon's like the motherly keeping. This is more of like the feminine properties of like the maiden.
Also, it has to do with beauty.
Because like there's three females in the scheme of the planets, and there's 3 males and the one androgynous, which is Mercury. So out of the 3 females, we all know that if you're into the esoteric vibe at all, it's the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And so Venus is the maiden, the moon is the mother.
And she's associated with the arts, beauty, success. So the image of like an archetypally wealthy, beautiful person, the beautiful people, lots of Venetian energy there. So like a Hollywood debutante, you know what I mean? Tons of Venus energy. And it has to do with the arts as well. So once again, it's a tie-in there.
Yeah, I think we've exhausted Venus.
I think, didn't Venus used to be pretty much the planet of war back in the day? And then somehow it ended up being Mars? That's another thing I kind of wanted to mention. Is like, if
yeah,
you
that
look
was like back in the Babylonian era, you know? Like
Right.
way back in the day.
But it's seemed pretty ubiquitous.
Like ancient Sumer or something.
And then there's some ancient accounts of like Venus being the newest planet. Like it may have just like come in from somewhere. Like maybe it was captured. Like it was a captured asteroid or like something like that. I had heard one theory that it was a new planet.
That's cool if it just formed.
Or that it flew in and then the sun captured it in an orbit.
On this subject, we're going to stretch it out because Dan Winter, bum, bum, bum. Anyways, he has this whole thing about like magnetic fields that can like reverse time and like heal and stuff. And he's like, okay, so Venus is at like this perfect sequence where it actually is creating a negative time field. Like Venus is going back in time.
What the fuck, Dan Winter?
Yeah,
dude.
dude.
Fuck.
No, but when you look at Venus, it kind of looks like Earth way back in the day, like ancient fucking proto-Earth.
Yeah.
Like molten surface with sulfuric freaking atmosphere, like they all tell us. So it could be, you know, I don't know enough about how everything really works to say that's bullshit or not, but that's a fucking funny ass one if it's real.
And it's you know, beautiful on the outside and stinky on the inside. Like you with your mustache and your breath. You're so beautiful on the outside, but
it's just
you drink coffee in the morning, I tell you.
I drink coffee. That's what it is.
Holy goat.
I should just, you know, do Listerine after the coffee. All right.
So, okay, last thing about Venus, if you look at the orbits, I do feel like we're bitching out if we don't at least mention this. Because if you don't
like
know,
the star that's formed.
Yeah. So
that's where Dan Winter gets his whole thing about the time travel is because of the pentagram. Like there's a perfect pentagram that's formed over like so many years of like how Venus is like.
Yeah, like what are we talking about?
Earth.
I'll paint you a picture. So let's say you're looking at the sun from the top, and you're watching Venus and the Earth spin around the sun. Well, the places where the Earth and Venus meet up are at the 5 points of the pentagram. Isn't that kind of interesting?
Yeah, it's the Earth is at the far point of the star, while Venus is at the cross of the lines.
Okay, very cool.
And then it creates this pattern like throughout the orbital periods. And so like Dan Winter says that this perfect fractal alignment creates like an negentropic time field that makes like shit go back in time. So his whole thing is like Isis flew to Venus with Osiris's body to like reform him, like basically put him in a sarcophagus in an orbit around Venus so that like he would reform like Spock in that on Search for Spock.
You lost me?
Basically like Venus is supposed to be like the Search for Spock planet, the Genesis planet.
Okay.
That's the idea that he's saying. It's created by a weird plasma field by how the Earth and Venus align.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, dude, it's some nutty shit.
And if you take the pentagram, right, and you break down into its component parts, it's basically the phi ratio, which is the golden spiral, which is the ratios that are infused in pretty much everything in life and in nature.
It's how everything works.
And then if you consider for a moment that every artist ever, in an attempt to touch beauty or create beauty or reproduce beauty, necessarily must learn it from nature. That's a pretty strong corollary that Venus is beautiful, Venus is associated with nature, and that nature is the golden standard for what is beautiful and what is pure. So that's the power of the goddess and why she should be worshipped as my favorite planet. Okay, moving on.
All right, so in the esoteric scheme, the sun is a planet, and we all know the sun isn't a planet. It's
Are we jumping to the sun now?
Yeah, because this is how it works.
We can't just go to Mars now because I want to go to Mars.
No, we have to talk about the sun because this is the esoteric order.
Okay, that's fine.
We have to go back to the sun.
We go back to the sun. Okay, the sun is in the center of the solar system. That's why it's called the solar system. And then the name of the sun is Sol.
All right, so it's supposed to be about the soul. So this is supposed to be like the actual center of the self. The solar energy is about projection, and like all the other planets, all of their energies and powers are all actually the sun's power that he projects into them, and they reflect it back. Like it's all solar energy that's being reflected back off of these things.
Weird.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Okay, well that sort of makes sense, because now I'm gonna have to jump into Saturn here. We're gonna keep jumping into Saturn because Saturn jumps in everyone's business.
Yeah, because we're at a point where Saturn now is kind of a player.
So now this is something I really appreciated that I got from Frater Xavier from just watching some of his videos to brush up on stuff and to hear stuff maybe I hadn't heard before. And when he talks about Saturn, he associates it with the circle, right? And the circle being the symbol of limitation, and how the banishing circle is basically a Saturnian circle, and that in so much as the circle represents in ceremony the boundary between yourself and your experience or everything else, and that basically the whole universe is contained within the circle. The symbol of the sun is that same circle with the dot in the middle. And so like what you were saying earlier about how all the different planets are expressions of solar energy, it's basically the idea between Saturn and the sun, and the symbol of the sun is that basically that is the sun represents the ego, the center, the self, the individual light of the soul.
The point.
Hadit, the infinite contraction, consciousness, and then its expression in reality is as it resists the circle, or as it exists within the circle.
Well, also the like its actual natural occurrence of the sun is the point of equilibrium between inward and outward force.
Right. So
it is it's kind of the point between Nuit and Hadit, the infinite expansion and infinite contraction, Saturn and Jupiter.
Okay. So the sun is really important, and if you're the esoteric sun, to boil it down, is the part of you that you identify with. It's the part of you that you consider you. It's the I. I am this, I am that.
This is why the sun sign is so important in Western astrology. It's because like, oh, what's your sun sign? It's
like, oh, I'm a Gemini.
It's like I identify as a Gemini.
The sun was in Gemini when I was born. Of course, we talked about this earlier. The sun actually was not in Gemini. It was...
Yeah, if you want to get to it, we're in the age of Aquarius, so Aquarius is at the precession is on the equinox, or it's in spring. So in spring, we're in Aquarius. So Aries is in summer, and then freaking Cancer is in fall. It's getting...
that's like confusing. But this is where they come up with that, oh, there's a 13th sign, because somebody like bumps their head and is like, oh, it has to do with the background stars. Like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's Vedic astrology.
That's Vedic, man. And they got way more than 13 signs.
Dude, they got so many signs.
This grid the sun crosses through more than 13 signs, like more than 12.
I don't even know that whole 13.
We're kind of getting into the weeds, but yeah. So the whole thing is the motion of the sun and the movement of the sun, and so you, the part of you, that's the sun. Your experience, that's the sun. Your inner light, that's the sun. It has to do with your ego, has to do with success. Now, Frater Xavier also said that the sun has a tendency to, like, everything is in its orbit, right? And if anything else is too close to the sun, it, like, tends to get burnt. You know what I mean? It's an exciting force. It's sort of like the hero of the story, but it has a corrosive quality to it as well. And then...
Yeah, you can get burnt out and diluted. Like, the solar energy can, like, blind you and fry you out as well.
Well, I don't think
we can short circuit.
We haven't talked enough about like archetypes, in this episode. Like
not really. We hit some, but we're not like that far, because Venus is obviously the archetype for Venus, and Hermes is obviously the archetype for Mercury.
Right, but like, so Zaphod Beetlebrox would be the sun,
or Dr. Teeth, or Major Shepherd, or Jesus, or that Jesus allegory lion from freaking, the Narnia tales, or like
even like Luke Skywalker.
Even Luke Skywalker.
Although I see him as a little more mercurial, despite what we talked about on the former show. But I think there is a moon and sun Haru Raha going on between Han Solo and...
Yeah, so like, but the sun is always represents the dying god, because like that's always a thing about the sun, is like it gets caught up in like the the death and rebirth cycle phenomenon.
But it never actually dies.
Yeah, it's not like it really dies, but there's still like ebb and flow with it on a daily basis. It's like the sun goes down because of the motions of other things.
Well, how did the Egyptians think of the sun? Weren't there 4 different gods for the 4 different times a day?
Well, that's just Aleister Crowley doing his thing. Like, there were so many solar deities.
Because Osiris is like the midnight sun, right? And then
I don't know. I don't know that. I just know the one from Liber Resh. I'm not sure if that's like real or not. It's just Aleister Crowley making that shit up.
I think that might have been one of the few things that was like accurate, like to ancient Egyptian, like 100%. I don't know though.
We're gonna have to ask some Thelemites.
Yeah,
they'll definitely tell us it was
some Egyptologists or something.
All right, so let's move on to Mars, up the powers of the force.
Now, Frederick Xavier sort of ham-handed Mars. He's like, Mars is the mean one.
He went,
Mars is red. Mars is aggressive. Mars is penetrating. I guess all that's correct. Mars is like the soldier of the planets, right?
Well, okay, so like Mars is the life force, like in its projection. It's also the rallying principle. Like it has to do with family and the organization of states, and like how we rally behind flags and how we like band together.
I thought that was more Venus.
No, it's actually Mars. Mars gets a little bit more because it's about war. It's a more intensive an energy here. Here we're actually dealing with projective force. We're actually dealing with the ability to do. And it's like, well, what are you going to do about me and doing this? It's like, you can't stop me. And then there's like, this is where war comes between two forces being like, no, you don't. And the other force saying, yes, I do. This is about projective, the ability to actually create and project into the world.
And conflict.
Yeah,
and fighting.
Conflict's an inevitability out of this because one person wants to use their force for one reason, and the other person doesn't want them to use their force for that reason.
So, like, our culture right now is obsessed with, like, toxic masculinity, right? So that's Mars energy.
No. Mars is just masculinity.
Okay, but it's also toxic.
Well, because all of these planets have positive and negative.
And negative, right.
So there's toxic femininity, there's toxic masculinity.
Right, I know. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying our culture is sort of Mars-centered in a lot of ways. So, like...
Well, actually, our culture is totally...
Martian.
Venetian-centered.
Well, like football.
Our foreign policy is Martian-centric. Oh, yeah.
Well, hold on. On television, you can show people getting beheaded and shot to death, but you can't show titties. So I have to disagree with you a little bit.
Yeah, but that's just because of our Puritan roots.
I'd say we're a Martian culture because we're like sports, who's in charge, winner takes all.
Nah, our lives revolve around freaking comforts and pleasures.
Even feminism is like all about
that's martial. That's because whatever's going on in feminism now isn't feminine. It is martial. It is Martian. It is masculine. And it is
Kung Fu. Kung Fu is Mars, right?
Yeah, and like this is where you get down to it is like the actual expression of force and energy.
And the military. The military is Mars.
Like it's not a bad thing. Like the actual ability to have the actual ability to create or to destroy is not a thing. It's not a problem. It's about like what you use that force for.
Who's the drill sergeant in
R. Lee Ermey?
The one with Joker. The other Joker movie with Nomer Pyles.
R. Lee Ermey.
That's his name?
The famous freaking drill sergeant who's in like...
I bet you could suck a golf ball through a garden hose.
Yeah, that's R. Lee Ermey.
Okay. Yeah, he's Mars.
Yeah, so the idea, like, this is where we get... like
I'm trying to think of archetypes.
This is why it's called martial. This is why martial arts. It has to do with military, which has to do with Mars.
When I was a little kid and I saw the word marital status, I always thought it said martial status.
But like the thing is that it's direct, it's orderly, and it's forceful. And this is the whole thing about it is it's a very direct force. And look, you could live for like 90 something years looking like you're like 38. If you practice martial arts, or you can get into a bunch of fights and get all messed up or killed, like it's your choice what you do with that.
And it's anything that shoots out a lot of stuff. Like
guns,
rockets, jets.
Oh yeah, we're working on a new show that we can get into some other topics.
Mars
call gun people.
Oh, you're gonna see. We're gonna have a show all about just crazy fucking politics, so we can keep it off of this show. All right, so we've pretty much covered Mars.
But we're gonna agree that we're into guns.
If you watch Holy Mountain, Mars is definitely the best planet.
And this is okay. So like this is a good one because we're already knee deep in this. If you go back and watch Holy Mountain, there's a weird if you can get through the Jesus scenes and past the Wizard's Tower.
If you have a sense of humor.
Yeah, if you have a good sense of humor or you're into that weird stuff, that weird bullshit art house nonsense, which I have to say Midsummer totally reminded me of a little bit of Holy Mountain.
Oh, a little bit, yeah.
Just with the sets, just all their sets, but that depicts the planetary energies in their negative connotation perfectly.
That's the point of the movie, partially.
Yeah, is to depict the planetary energies, and it's this is what you work with, and with them you ascend the Holy Mountain.
Okay, so...
That's why the planetary energies ascended, and the character you've been following in the movie doesn't do it. All right, we broke down Holy Mountain. Okay.
Okay, so we got 2 or 3 more to go.
Jupiter.
Jupiter.
Okay, Jupiter's about government and law.
Let's start here. Jupiter's the biggest planet.
It's expansive.
It's expansive. If you're going to subscribe to the idea that planets grow and that Pangea used to be from a time when the Earth was physically smaller and that all the planets grow, that would mean that Jupiter is the eldest planet and will at one day become a sun.
Unless you're actually into the concept of the Greek mythology, because then Jupiter beat up Saturn, because Saturn was way bigger. So all the other planets got spat out of Saturn. And that's why it's not as big as it used to be.
There may be some truth to that someday. You never know. They're finding new moons all the time on Saturn.
It totally could be, because I've heard some nonsense that we lived around Saturn, our planet was around Saturn. So it could be that Jupiter pulled a bunch of moons off of Saturn that became the inner planets.
Now, isn't there some Manly P. Hall Masonic shit about the age of Jupiter and the 5th sun and...
Yeah, I think that's the shit.
And the concept of Jupiter becoming a sun someday, and then and then you got fucking Star Wars, right?
Unfortunately,
Star Wars with the 2 fucking suns.
Dude, I have to spoil it for you because 2010 Space Odyssey, the obelisk falls into Jupiter and it becomes a second sun. So I just ruined 2010 Space Odyssey for you, and you haven't even seen the first one.
That's not even a Kubrick though, right? 2010.
I don't think so.
Well, nobody cares.
Still, we're way past that shit. Nothing's happened like that. We're already past Akira. This shit's gonna fucking...
So who's Jupiter, as an archetypal character?
Thor.
Okay.
Thor and his dad. Thor is the representation of Jupiter,
so
god of lightning.
Kingly, kind of happy and jovial.
Yes. It's even in the term jovial.
Jovian, right?
Yeah.
So stately.
So
the Romans, Zeus, it was actually Jupiter.
It was Jupiter for the Romans. Zeus was
the
Greek.
Greeks. So Jupiter was the king of the gods, right? That was the one who was that's the one that, when Caesar rolled into Rome, he was as Jupiter. They painted his face as Jupiter when...
Yeah, and you had basically the god of war as the Gaul, that he's I'm going to, torture the god of war.
Yeah, you're right. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Because this is a big play between the powers, is that Mars and Jupiter, you have war, and then you have state. And so, when war and state get together, and this is why I love the Frederick-Cad scheme on,
so in Rome, when they kill the king of Gaul, that's Jupiter overcoming Mars?
Yeah. It's supposed to be oh, look, we've defeated war.
That's fucking clever.
Yeah, that's how you work with ancient paganism. You dramatize and then you that's how you control the people.
Okay, so that's an example of how you would use these energies in a ritual. Because we've talked about these planets, but we haven't talked about how to use them, right?
Well, we haven't gotten through all the planets.
Okay, we
got so many planets to go through.
And then Jupiter's usually associated with wealth
sometimes,
the state, and also art.
Yeah, but this is more of art. Expensive art. This is art not for aesthetic value, but more for monetary value.
For showing off the power of the state.
Yeah.
It's so a beautiful painting that you love would be Venus, and then a big temple, I guess.
A really nice building, and then something more of wealth symbols, Venus as a wealth symbol, rather than as something to comfort you. It's more of like, look how shiny my like brass ends are on my desk, you know?
Okay,
You know, kind of shit like that. So,
is there anything else you want to say about Jupiter?
no, it's more of that's a good one because this is where the planets start getting real open ended.
Well, we're getting near the end of the show, so we got to keep going because we got to.
This is gonna be a long one. This is gonna be a long one.
We got to talk about Saturn now.
And we got to talk about all of them, dude.
Are we gonna jump to Saturn now, or are we gonna?
Yeah, we're gonna go to Saturn now. We're done with Jupiter.
It's got a red spot. I don't know what else to say. I saw the Shoemaker comets collide into Jupiter once. That was gnarly.
The Masons. That's Jupiter. Jupiter is the Masons.
Freemasons.
Freemasons. All right, so yeah, they're blue. All right, so moving to Saturn. Okay, Saturn is really, really important. Not only does it deal with time and matter, because it's all about limitations of matter, also has to do with religion and beliefs.
So Darth Vader.
It's very Darth Vader, and it's about the structural religions. Like, more of like the church of religions rather than the actual religion itself.
It has to do with limitations, authority, aging, time, instructions. It's a planet of teachers, taskmasters.
So it's this one is a weird one because it's so high up the tree. It's actually got like a double sort of like it comes in two genders.
And
but
Saturn
not it comes in old man time.
Can you even see Saturn with the naked eye?
No, well, yeah. It's very, very dim. Very, very dim. Saturn has like two archetypes. One's old man time, and one is the crone.
The old crone.
Yeah, the old crone. So the maiden mother and the crone.
Kali Ma.
Saturn's the crone.
She's also like Kali Ma. Because she gives birth to and reabsorbs everything in death again.
And this is also like the whole Thelemic Babylon, which is like the more of the field in which all of it's happening.
It's the numinous.
Yeah.
It's the numinous of the numina, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that a Tool song?
No.
Who's Tool? Again, I don't. Isn't it that band from the '90s that had that one singer Maynard that they kicked out after Lateralis or 10,000 Days? I don't remember. That was 10,000 years ago.
Even JonTron produces more content than Tool. It only takes him 3 years to come out with a video. Saturn is all about death, time, religious structures, authority, like spiritual authority.
Who are some other Saturns we could think of in movies and stuff? Like, who's a Saturn?
Who is a Saturn? Oh, shit.
Who's like the boss? Who's like the fucking dark, evil boss that fucking rules shit?
The evil witch from Snow White when she like transforms into the old crone. She kind of goes from the regal queen.
Maleficent?
No. The queen from Snow White.
Oh.
I think she's just the queen.
Oh.
I think that's just her name. I don't know if she has an actual name.
Oh, well, Saturn is the cube. Saturn is the black cube that you see everywhere all the time, right? And there's even a hexagonal shape of clouds at its northern pole, remember?
Yeah, it's all about structure and solidification.
And it corresponds to the archetype of death. The ancients, how they typified it having a sickle, and then we find out that it actually had rings, you know, the rings are actually very thin and sickle-like compared to the planet itself.
Yeah.
It's like laser thin compared to how big the planet is.
Or at least it looks laser thin.
And they say that it's about the width of this house.
That's cool.
It's very thin.
There's just like this dust cloud just floating through space.
It's very skinny. Like you could traverse it pretty fast. Apparently, my dad helped track a probe through the rings of Saturn once.
Okay, so
that's kind of cool. But anyway,
that is all of the old school planets. Now, we all know in our modern day that there's a couple more, and one that we can dispute on whether it's a planet or not. But, god damn it, it has some associations with it. So, let's just go for it and try to, like, get those. Because if you're gonna, like, if you're into these things and you're into, like, Kabbalism, the rest of these planets would be represented in Binah, which is represented by Saturn. Now, you can tap into them using the same freaking way you would do, like, a ritual for Saturn, like a hexagram, while doing the Hebrew god names for that sphere. But just draw the symbol of the other planet. Like, you just don't even deal with anything else.
Well, okay, so to loop into that, so we talked about the banishing ritual of the pentagram, banishing earth energies, but when you do the banishing ritual of the hexagram, you're usually start by banishing Saturn, right?
Yes.
So why is that?
Because Saturn's supposed to contain all the other planets in it.
Okay, so it's a little bit like the Earth in that it contains all the other elements in it. Saturn is the planet that contains all the other planets in it. And that's why in the tarot, the universe pulls double duty for Earth and for Saturn?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
And then also in Kabbalah, it's understood that this sphere of Malkuth, or Earth, sits on the lap of Binah, right?
Yes.
And so, in a sense, the material world is an expression of Binah.
Yes.
That is why it's the Dark Mother from which all things are born, and all things that are born of it must again die before they can be reborn again. That's Saturn. That's the significance of Saturn.
Yeah, so like the rest of these planets, if you're doing Kabbalistic stuff, you could just either do just Binah or, to associate with the rest of the planets, or just fit them into the tree, like, for the rest of the spheres. Because I know some people are like, oh, Chakma is Neptune and freaking...
I like that approach. I like to mix it up a little bit.
Well, okay, that works because I would put Uranus and Doth, because now we can move to Uranus, because Uranus is the rebel. Uranus is the maverick. Uranus is the wacky one. So all the other planets, they have a axis that's similar to the rotation of the sun.
Okay.
Uranus is not like that. Uranus is like, it's like rolling like a wheel.
Yeah, it is completely canted compared to the other planets. It is doing its own damn thing. It has rings, but they're vertical rings.
Yeah, its axis is actually pointing towards the sun.
Jupiter actually has rings too. They're just very small.
Yeah.
Just wanted to bring that up.
No, we covered that in our remote viewing episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, dude, we totally brought that up.
But Uranus spins like a buzzsaw.
Yeah, it's so weird. And so, like, if you ever played like Universe Sandbox Squared, you can actually pull up Uranus and like look at the rotation of its moons, and they're just like spiraling around it rather than like orbiting it. It's the coolest because they're spinning just like the planet's spinning, in like just a way different way than every other planet is spinning.
Now, I already said if we're gonna base everything on Holy Mountain, that Mars is the best planet, but Uranus is a close fucking second. Because Uranus is the planet of absurdity and ridiculousness and spontaneity, silliness. Did I already say absurdity? I could say absurdity twice.
It's okay. So you guys want to know why
and revolution
the world is so fucking weird right now?
It sort of rules Aquarius.
Yeah.
In the newer scheme of things, I think it's Saturn originally.
But also, okay, and this has to go with Franz Bart. Like I have to go with my own like.
Have you ever met an Aquarius?
No,
okay,
like,
go ahead, Andrew.
My deep dive occult works to like look at actual like fucking like reading books and shit on these subjects. The guy Franz Barton, he was a fucking 20th century occultist, and he actually survived the concentration camps of the fucking Nazis. And he wrote books. He wrote really good books like Introduction to Hermetics, which is a great work on learning how to actually get started and cultivate magical powers. And then Evocation of Spirits, which is a great one of how to like evoke spirits. He had a book where he talked about like the planets, and like it was in Evocation of Spirits where he talks about this, and he talks about the different spheres and the different planets, and he goes through and he gets to Uranus, and as he talks about Uranus, he's like, this, and this is back in the like late 40s when he's writing this, it's like, these energies are not hitting our planet yet. And he says this will only happen when our planet is being inhabited by blue-skinned people.
What in the fuck?
Now, see, this is where me knowing enough about this...
Is this Dan Winters again?
No, this is Franz Barton. This is back in the day.
Okay, you did say that. Yeah, I know.
This is where my occultism kicks in. It's like blue-skinned people. So he could have only have seen this in a visionary state, Or like something's telling him this.
So Smurfs.
Yeah, no.
Krishna.
The Indigo Children.
Oh.
So he's talking about when the Indigo Children are fucking present. That's when the Uranian vibration hits our planet.
So if we eat enough Tide Pods.
No, see, that's the thing is that is a symptom of the Uranian energies hitting our planet. Like, we're in the middle of a new planetary energy manifesting in our species. We're finally there. We finally reached the tech level to get Uranian energy. Now shit's just weird enough that it could, like, there's enough chaos that Uranian shit can start happening.
So if you ever want to wake up and staple bacon to your face.
Yeah, you know you're being ruled by Uranus. Yeah, you're an anus.
Or if like you put little googly eyes above your dog's butthole. That's also
Or
probably
your rabbit's butthole.
Yeah. That's probably Uranus telling you to do that.
Yeah. So
We had to put a butt joke in there because everyone pronounces it Uranus. Just call it Uranus.
its actual name was Uranus, which was Kronos' father of Saturn. So
It's not that hard to say. It's really not. Just say
Yeah.
Uranus. Just let's end this Uranus joke. I can't even say it the wrong way. Uranus. Just say
no,
Uranus.
that sounds like urine.
Yeah, it's
Doesn't
better.
It's even better.
It's a little better.
But it's the weird one. It's the one with the name that's a joke.
Do you think that's
It's
why?
it's the Joker fucking planet.
Do you think that's why? It's because even Uranus itself doesn't even care to be. It calls itself Uranus because it's silly and funny and irreverent.
It's all like, I'm Uranus.
Also, okay, before we leave Uranus, I had heard that
But let's
it's
make it quick.
Yeah, I had heard it's the higher octave of Mercury.
Yeah, because it's also in Holtz the planets, as he's going through the different planets, he gets to Uranus and he says Uranus the magician.
Okay.
And then
I like Uranus.
yeah,
It's a fucking cool planet.
it's wacky.
Just real quick before we leave Uranus, what's Uranus in Kerbal?
There isn't one. It ends at Joule.
So it ends with Jupiter?
Yeah, it ends with Jupiter,
Oh.
and it has like
So there's no Saturn?
no, but there is a Titan analog, and that's Lathe.
I'm gonna get all philosophical here. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So then when you get to Hakma, we're not really talking Kabbalah, but we are talking in the order.
No, we're talking about Neptune now.
Now Neptune comes after.
All right, so
Uranus.
Neptune's really, really weird, and unless
Neptune rules Pisces, and supposedly the era of Christ and the old Abrahamic religions are of the age of Pisces, and we're moving into the age of Aquarius, which Uranus rules. So we're moving from Neptune to Uranus right now, and so Neptune corresponds to the old Aeon energies. That's the way I've had it described to me. That's just one thing I wanted to throw out there.
well, okay, I wouldn't say it's the I would disagree on that, but I'd say like in a sense.
Okay.
Because if you watch Holy Mountain in the Neptune area, like the Neptune part, dude, okay, it is weird. It is the weirdest part of the goddamn movie, right?
I found Neptune to be probably the hardest of those planets in Holy Mountain to
And
understand.
I've been thinking about it lately, getting ready for this episode, right? And so what it is
It's about
because
sacrifice, right?
yes, it's about blind obedient sacrifice, and it's basically like also about blind faith. Blind faith and blind sacrifice are the negative polarities of Neptune.
But there's also now Neptune is also associated with like video games and movies because it's associated with escapism.
And also psychic powers. Like
yes.
hardcore psychic powers.
Hardcore psychic powers.
Like
It's
telekinesis, telepathy, all like the actual like what we would consider real Jean Grey psychic powers.
Well, besides Saturn, I might even still say it. Neptune's the scariest planet.
Yeah, it is.
Like, Saturn
okay,
Saturn
so-
probably has evil reptiles that will drink your blood psychically living on it.
It's got dragons. Saturn's got dragons.
And who knows? Maybe Saturn's got dragons. Maybe Saturn just emits this crazy evil energy that rules over all the bad things on this planet. But I tell you what, I would feel a little more comfortable staring down in the orbit of Saturn because it's beautiful than I would Neptune, because Neptune is just this big, blue, fucking evil-ass marble that's enormous, sitting in space, and like, how cold is that water? Like, what is that water anyway on Neptune?
It's
Can
not.
we look it up.
It's
I'm gonna
not
look it up.
water.
What the fuck is it? It's gas. It's a gas planet, right?
It's a huge
But we think of it as
blue
like-
ball of gas. You think of it as water. I think of it as a gas giant because I'm smart.
Well, Neptune's the god of the sea.
Yeah, but
That's why I'm thinking of it that way.
So okay, so like Mars has to do.
Motherfucker.
Oh, so Mars has to do with military.
Oh wow,
Okay,
it's mostly hydrogen and helium.
and the projection of external force. Now, and regulating the external pressures. Neptune has to do with regulating of internal pressures.
Guess what? It contains some water.
And pressing force internally. So Neptune actually has it has representations in police and law enforcement itself, because this is about an internal regulator rather than the Martian external regulator.
We investigated ourselves and found nothing wrong. So could you just light Neptune on fire? It's just all hydrogen and helium.
I don't think it has oxygen to burn.
It's got a little bit of water,
Oh, it might have. Yeah, then it has some oxygen. So if it's
but
got,
not enough.
well, there you go. I like how it looks like blue Jupiter because it has like a big black dot on it, like right where Jupiter's dot would be. You know, like it's just like these patterns just repeat and repeat throughout like nature. Like gas giants just get big dots if they don't have giant rings.
And I believe that Pluto crosses into the orbit of
Yes, it does.
Neptune at one point.
Yeah, it does.
In which, since I was a little kid, Pluto used to be the 9th planet, and now it's not considered a planet, and now they're gonna call Luna a planet. So I don't know, but I'm gonna call Pluto a planet because it's Pluto. It's the dog and Mickey. It's the underworld guy. It's Hades.
Yeah. Okay, so this is where mythology comes back. Okay, so Hades had 2 names. It was Hades and Pluton. So Hades was him in his death role, and then Pluton was him in his wealth role, because he also ruled the treasures from underneath the earth,
so like
the underground.
That's where we get the word plutocracy from.
Yes.
We're ruled by the wealthy.
Yes.
Which is what we live in.
Yes, because Pluton is the god of wealth, while Hades is the god of death.
Interesting. So, oftentimes you see Pluto associated with Kether at the top of the tree of life. Why?
I have no idea. Again, I do an association where all these planets are smack dab in Binah. So if I'm going to be using these, I'm just going to be associating them with the powers of Binah. But, it's like, oh, this specified planet,
Yeah, so Pluto's the agent of death.
Yeah, so this is like the funny one. Okay, so Pluto was in Scorpio in the 90s. Okay, and it takes about like 13 years for Pluto to travel through each star sign.
So yeah, so
like Pluto is death, and Scorpio is sex. So when death is in sex, AIDS is on the rise. Gothic things are trendy.
Heroin.
Like
death is sexy. Gothic sexy. Like that was my childhood.
Sexy death, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
sex and death.
Yeah. It's fucking Eros and Thanatos. That was the 90s. Then
I'm getting a rubbery one just talking about it.
Death moved into education. Sagittarius.
Boom. School shootings.
And
death in school.
And also death of schools. Like, the education just went to shit.
Maybe killing kids.
No, not only that, it's just like no good educations anymore for anyone. Like, education's dead. Degrees are worthless. And then now you have your gender studies degree.
And then what happened to it?
Okay, so now
it moves into Capricorn.
Structure. Establishment.
Epstein.
Freaking
dude,
Pluto.
Pluto and Capricorn.
I mentioned this.
That's Epstein.
Dude, I mentioned
like,
this
in a nutshell. Secrets of the establishment that are fucking heinous. Like secret power. That's really what Pluto's about.
The UN.
Secret hidden power.
Dude, the UN right now is bankrupt. Like, all these structures that we assumed were like these gigantic things are now being destroyed. Pluto's one of those big ones when it comes down to like astrology, because it moves so goddamn slow.
So who's Pluto in like a movie? Who would be a Pluto character? Like
well, Hades from Hercules.
Okay, but what else? We got what about Zorg from Fifth Element?
No, I would say
or is he more
Agent Smith from The Matrix.
Oh no, dude. Are we gonna fucking go there?
Yeah.
No, dude. I don't think Agent Smith is more.
No, because he became death to the machines. So he became like a rogue agent that was just gonna destroy and consume.
I'm not gonna throw my dog in this fight until I think about it, Andrew.
Yeah, you think you get that noggin and jogging.
I will, because I don't want to say it too early, because
even the machines had an agenda. They wanted to keep people alive so that they could stay alive, Like, Smith wanted to destroy everything. He just wanted to kill. And then, of course, we know that one guy who'd be like, oh, I'm death.
We know, we've kind of covered all the planets, and we're sort of at time right now. I wish we could have gone over our Mass Effect planet scheme.
Nah, well, that's a little more Kabbalah.
Okay, we'll talk about that some other time. We'll talk about the Kabbalah of Mass Effect sometime.
And then we'll do the Kabbalah of pop culture. How about that episode? Because then we could do the Kabbalah of Mass Effect, and we can also talk about the Kabbalah of Star Trek. And
okay, just because it won't be hard to edit, can we go through each planet and assign a character to each planet, and then we'll just be done?
Right now?
You're tired, huh?
Okay, so
Mercury.
No. We start off with we already did Earth, because that's Aang from Avatar.
Okay, Aang from Avatar. Moving on.
Sailor Moon, Sailor Mercury,
fuck you,
Sailor Venus,
fuck you,
Sailor Mercury,
fuck you,
Sailor Mars,
fuck
Sailor
you,
Jupiter, Sailor Saturn, Sailor Uranus, Sailor Neptune, Sailor Pluto.
I want them all in my bed all at the same time, including the non-binary lesbian ones.
And then who we got Jesus for the sun. Why not?
Okay, man. Thank you, everybody. That's the whole rabbit. Eat carrots, shoot lasers, watch Sailor Moon. That's all. Bye-bye.
I guess so.